Good morning and welcome to the Committee of the Whole for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. Hakan Place, Connecticut, Squamish, Awayme. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. For those at home, I am Councillor Doug Race. I am the acting mayor this month, excuse me, and so will be chairing this meeting. We have the first motion is the adoption of the agenda. I have one addition to the agenda. It's staff policy number 47211. And its consideration of a policy prohibiting senior staff from riding bicycles. Which we can spend a lot of time discussing today or put off for another time.
I wouldn't take that sitting down.
Apart from that, is there somebody that would move approval of the agenda? Mayor Elliott, seconded Councillor French. Favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So first up is a delegation, and just in case you didn't all get the agenda with the time estimates, because there were two floating around, the time for this, excuse me, is 10 to 10:30, and then 10:30 to 11 is summer concerts. 11 and 11:30 are Ms. Glenday with Climate Innovation and Corporate and Strategic Plan Actions, which we may actually reverse in timing, except for Ms. Glenday. So first of all, Mr. Blackman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm representing the Squamish Alternative Energy Group. We'd like to move forward an initiative just up front to get more electric vehicle chargers installed in Squamish, and I'm going to go through quickly why we should do that and why we can't put it off any longer. So how many people saw this article or remember reading this article on the Chief? Okay, so I did outline some of the reasons for that, but I'm just going to go through that again. There we go. So again, just quickly, this is in the U.S. Transportation emissions represent about 28% of total emissions. The reason for that is they use a lot of coal, so they have a dirtier grid than we do. In BC, because of our very low fossil fuel use, our GHG emissions from transportation, according to BC government, is 39%. So it's a much bigger amount percentage-wise, so which means we can do a lot to reduce those GHGs more effectively by reducing the number of fossil fuel vehicles on the road. So these are some of the targets. I won't go through those because I don't know how easy they're going to be to hit. So basically, electric transport is a low-hanging GHG removal fruit. Again, these are some of the emissions, and with LNG, we don't know what's going to happen there. There's a number of targets, but if the LNG industry does kick off, and it's going to be a lot more difficult. So again, reducing GHGs from other sectors like transportation are going to be far more important. So basically, this is a summary of some of the new vehicles coming, or here already. And I won't go through them, but there's a lot of new vehicles, new exciting vehicles. The big trend this year has been that most of the new vehicles introduced have a 200-mile or 350-kilometer range now, which is very difficult. The Leaf, when it was first introduced in 2013, had about 130 to 140-kilometer range, which is so barely 100 miles, not even 100 miles, 80 to 90 miles, which made it a lot more difficult. The range anxiety was a lot higher. So we're seeing that range anxiety quickly go away, and some very exciting vehicles, including this one here, which is one of my favorites. I don't know if you can't see my pointer. Anyway, the one on the left-hand side there is the gray truck. That's the Rivian. And that truck has 3 different battery configurations. One of them is plus 600 kilometers per charge. So again, range anxiety will be, and you can actually use that as if you're a crew, you can use that to power all your electric tools out in the middle of nowhere, or your concerts or whatever. So again, this is some very exciting technology coming, and it's coming quite quickly. And the reason it's coming quickly is because basically if you look at this chart, and I don't know where I saw this, but I recreated it. If you look at the technology over time, that technology initially is very, very expensive. And resources tend to be, when they're new, like oil, coal, when they were introduced, they were very, very cheap, which led to rapid adoption. So what happens with technology? It's very expensive initially, but over time it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Whereas resources over time get more and more expensive. So this is why that trend is certainly favoring the adoption of electric vehicles. And the reason that the electric vehicles are so attractive and such a great technology is that they're extremely efficient. And you can see this is whole life cycle emissions from creation of fuel right through to end use and production, or basically the driving of the vehicles. You can see the electric vehicles, when you take all the factors, all the different sectors or steps in and creating fuel to driving the vehicle, are 73% efficient. Now, a lot of people said hydrogen is coming, and I know the new EV initiatives do give some incentives for hydrogen, but again, it fails in comparison. There's just no way that, certainly for passenger transport, it's a viable option. It's not really that much more efficient than the internal combustion engine, which is 13% efficient when the whole life cycle is taken into account. Another advantage of electric vehicles is performance. An internal combustion engine has thousands of moving parts, 750 moving parts in a typical engine and 500 moving parts in a typical transmission. In an electric vehicle, you have about 20. That's the Tesla. The Tesla Model 3 has about 20 moving parts. So the efficiency is exemplified by the amount of energy it takes to move the vehicle. A Chevy Bolt, for example, has a 390-kilometer range, and that does that on less energy consumed or contained in 2 U.S. gallons of gas. So again, you use far less energy because of the greater efficiency advantage. The Tesla P100 is 500 gallons on less than 3 gallons of gas. So again, you can't argue with the efficiency. It's just so far superior than what we have right now. And Tesla just completed a 1 million mile endurance test in 2018. So these things, we don't know how long they're going to last, but they're going to last a lot longer. And as one of my friends says, the internal combustion engine is exploding, the electric vehicle is spinning. So it's again a much different technology, far more efficient. The most expensive part in an electric vehicle right now is batteries, and in a nutshell, those costs are coming down very, very rapidly, as this next slide shows. When they first came out in 2010, it was about $1,200 per kilowatt hour. We're now heading for 100. So again, more than 90% decline in cost. So this is why it's going to be pretty hard to stop this trend. And right now, this is the global plug-in volume by make in 2017. As you can see, a lot of vehicles you won't recognize, but most of them are in China. More than 50% of EVs sold in the world right now and on the roads right now are in China. In Canada, the sales are rapidly accelerating. We're seeing that as vehicles get cheaper and cheaper and range gets longer and longer, and options increase, we're seeing a lot more electric vehicle sales. This is something that if you're interested, there's the link below here, evadoption.com, future EVs. This is a chart showing all the new vehicles coming in the next 5 years. Most of them are actual coming, some of them are concept and may not hit the roads, but there's 67 basically on this list, and I couldn't include it all because there's 67 vehicles. So basically, EV adoption identified 67 new EVs coming by 2025, plus they didn't include a lot of vehicles that are also coming. So again, I won't go through these, but you'll see there's over 100 new vehicles coming by 2025, electric vehicles of all kinds of different configurations and ranges and uses. So by 2025, they estimate that, or sooner, you will be able to get a comparable electric vehicle that does more than what your internal combustion car does now. But you pay 80% less for fuel, and you'll be paying the same or less for that vehicle. So again, it's going to be, why would anybody buy a vehicle at that point that's not electric power? So these are some forecasts, and I won't go into them because they're rapidly changing. They continually underestimate the EV adoption. For example, here's a forecast from 2017 done by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, and already by 2018 that estimate was out of date. They estimated by 2018 there'd be 1,592 sales. The actual is 2.08 million. So again, they were out by a factor of 38%, and that's just in 1 year. So people are the experts are constantly underestimating how fast these things are coming. And this is just a summary of some of the forecasts. And again, I won't go through them, but suffice it to say they're coming a lot more quickly. And what they're estimating is they're seeing sales growth of 60% per year on average globally of electric vehicle sales. So again, coming very, very quickly. And here's why. They're quieter, they're way more efficient. We have autonomous driving, which is going to be a lot more difficult with internal combustion engine. They're much more durable and reliable. We have the Tesla 1 million mile test. They have 50 to 80% lower emissions. There's been a lot of articles floating around saying that diesel is more efficient and emits fewer emissions than electric. That's been totally disproven. It was basically put out by somebody who's pro-fossil fuel. So again, you really can't argue with the facts. They have superior performance. The torque is 100% from zero, so they're much more quickly. You'll see off the line, you'll see videos of Teslas racing supercars in a Tesla, which is 1/10 the cost. It outperforms it. So the other advantages, it's new industry and new businesses, new jobs. About 130% of all new jobs in any economy are created by startup businesses. So from 0 to 1. So basically what that means is that startups create all the new jobs in any economy. So, and this is an industry that really, it's a new industry, so there's going to be a lot of new businesses created, a lot of new jobs. And 3, 2, 1, the costs to maintain are a lot less, 80% less for an electric vehicle. Basically it's tires and wipers. The cost of the fuel is far less. I was driving to Vancouver in my little electric car, and it was $1.75 for me to charge if I bought the power. If I drive my SUV, it was $30 round trip. So again, far 80 to 90% less, and sometimes even more now. And the cost to buy them will soon be less than internal combustion engine. So these things are coming. Some of the incentives we see, again, I won't go through them, but we have a $5,000 incentive for a new electric vehicle in BC. It's up to $77,000. We also have the scrapping program. If you scrap a fossil fuel vehicle, you get up to $6,000 for a new EV or $3,000 for a used electric vehicle. We have new federal incentives. I don't know if people are aware of these, but this $5,000 incentive that's just recently come out. There are 27 vehicles qualified for them. They're going to be spending $300 million over the next 3 years on the electric vehicles transportation sector. And you can actually write, for businesses, they can write EVs off in the year that they're licensed. So you can write the whole cost of the vehicle off in the first year it goes on the road. And they also have $130 million over 5 years for 5 charging stations. And you can actually see what vehicles qualify by going to this link here. So basically, in a nutshell, sorry about that. Just let me close that up. So, in a nutshell, if EVs are cheaper to buy, operate, and maintain, can be charged at home or for free, why would anyone pay more for a dirty, noisy, and expensive fossil fuel vehicle? So that's the $64 billion question. So next steps, basically you see the incentives, we have the rebates. More and more people are taking EVs for a test drive. Hydro rates are rising at 5% a year. Now they've just come out and said that the rates will only rise by 8.1% over the next 5 years. That's not going to happen. I think we're going to see higher costs than that. So basically solar is becoming more and more cost effective. So people will be able to use solar to charge their vehicles at home, which will make it even cheaper. So basically what I'm asking for today is we have hundreds of new vehicles coming. We are a tourist destination. We have 2 semi-public or private basically chargers and 1 public charger in town, if you don't include the Tesla, which is strictly for Tesla over in the Boston Pizza. So we really are very underwritten, very poorly prepared for this onslaught. What's going to happen as a tourist destination, we're going to see a lot of tourists coming, looking for places to charge. If they can't find them, they're going to go somewhere else. So I think it's really imperative that we get moving on this very quickly. I know that new council, new mayor, you have other priorities that you have to take care of. So what we're proposing is we form a committee, and I'm looking for a motion, to form a committee to investigate the incentives. We're going to look at private-public partnerships, going to the retailers, the vendors of the properties that they're on, to see how feasible it is to put chargers in and around Squamish, so we can get ready for this massive increase in electric vehicle traffic coming, driven by tourists who can't charge at home. And basically that's my presentation.
Are there any questions? Members of council?
So,
Councilor Pettengill, Councilor Anderson.
at the, I can't remember what it was called now, but the event went to in January for new councillors. There was a discussion, I think it was in New West, where they found that with the switch to LEDs, there's a capacity to put level 2 chargers on light posts, fairly low cost. And I think I mentioned that to you in the first conversation. Have you had a chance to look into that and see if that sort of thing is feasible? Or?
Yes, it is. The only challenge would be where the light post. So if you have the light post on the inside of the sidewalk, you'd have to actually either put a conduit across, which isn't very good, or you'd have to actually drill underneath. So we'd have to see where the light posts are located, but that's something that's very feasible. That's something, though, we have to talk to BC Hydro about. New West is a slightly different animal because they have more autonomy. They have their own energy utility, as does Nelson. So we are BC Hydro, so we really have to go to BC Hydro about any of this. But BC Hydro they must realize that they're drastically underprepared for the onslaught of electric vehicles coming. So I think these are conversations that probably would be better had at the municipal level and provincial level.
Councillor Anderson, and then I'll put myself in this.
We have a couple of initiatives already that potentially may tie to your theme, Brendan Park master planning process. Some of the feedback we received from at least one person at our council strategic plan open house a month and a half or so was that Brendan Park should be targeted as a location for an EV charging station. Do you have any thoughts on that particular site and its merits for further attention?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. There's public sites, and which we would, a municipality would get government funding for to put chargers in, and those could be for fee. There are a number of, and I sent some emails and articles to council in preparation for this, which I think you probably received. There are a number of municipalities now that are switching, North Vancouver is included in that, are switching now to a fee for charging, so it doesn't have to be paid for by the municipality, and no reason why it should be. Why should anybody pay to put fuel in my car? So, but I can charge at a level 2 charger, I can charge for $2 or $3. So I think we need to see a public program. So Brendan Park, the Adventure Center, other public sites that are owned by the municipality where we can put chargers in for fee, make it for fee. We can even combine it with a solar program so they can have solar panels as part of the charging infrastructure to reduce the cost and make it, you can actually cover it so when the rain people can charge and the solar panels actually act as a roof. And that would not cost the municipality money. It would be amortized over over a 20 or 30 year period. Solar panels will last 30 plus years. So I mean, there's a number of different opportunities, but we need to start investigating these, decide on what the costs are, how we can move forward with these, and more importantly, we have to start talking to businesses and getting them on board as a municipality. That this is a trend that's coming. It's going to cost them money by not having chargers on their properties. So we talked to people like Save On Foods. The Squamish Credit Union put a charger in, so they actually talked to the vendor, who's not owned by the Squamish Credit Union. So we need to have this conversation with the vendors. They found a way to do it. They paid for it themselves with funding they had, put a level 2 charger in. And there's a number of businesses in town, I think, that with the right conversation and awareness would probably be very much on board. They've got to be thinking about this. We've already seen a number of retailers do this. IKEA has done it. Canadian Tire has got money for putting chargers in across the country. So again, it's the conversation. We just can't put it off another year or two. We need to begin having that conversation now, and that's what our committee will do. We'll set up a committee. I will be happy to lead it, and we basically begin investigating the different options and opportunities available and the funding available, because there's a brand new, we're still coming to terms with this new program, this $300 million program, federal program. It was just basically finalized 2 weeks ago.
So, has there been any work done on whether or not there's sufficient supply of electricity? And the reason I say that is in my first term, Mayor Gardner and I attended a conference in Bellevue, Washington, which was actually on neighborhood energy utilities. And the opening speaker was a little off topic, but he went on about if the state of Washington overnight converted all their vehicles to electric vehicles, actually it would have a negative effect on the environment because their sources of electricity are significantly coal-fired and so forth, and they'd have to crank that up. BC doesn't have that problem, but you are still adding, I would think, if this does overtake the province, you would be adding a sufficient load to the grid. And is there any issue with that? Solar panels, I take your point, everybody could have them on the roof, but if they charge overnight and that's when it's dark, there's perhaps limitations to that. Is there anything on the supply side of electricity that you can tell us about?
Well, right now, BC Hydro is selling excess power to the Columbia River Treaty. So right now, and this is not something that's going to happen overnight. They're figuring, I know BC has committed to, I think it's by 2040, they're not going to sell any more fossil fuel vehicles on the roads. And a number of jurisdictions have done the same thing. So they're getting ready for it. The problem would be rapidly solved, and battery technology is getting better. So we use the grid as the battery, but during the day, when the demand is highest, you're generating solar and wind power. So it's very easily doable, and we have a Site C coming on board. So if we don't have an LNG industry, we're going to have another, 6,000 megawatt hours produced, or gigawatt hours produced by Site C. So we certainly don't have a shortage, and I know BC has been pulling back on some of their benefits for the net metering program, the solar net metering program, which allows people to feed into the grid and use the grid as your battery. They're also pulling back on the independent power project, because they're saying it's costing them too much money. So there's a massive availability of power right now, and BC Hydro is trying to cut that down because they have too much power right now.
Yeah, I was thinking years ahead.
Yeah, but then see, more and more people will adopt. I mean, it makes economic sense right now. I figured out if we do a solar co-op and we can get solar panels for less than $250, the payback time is about 15 years if you're offsetting your level 2 power, your step 2 power. So more and more people are doing it. Right now, there's no incentives. If there is ever an incentive for solar on your home, you're going to see a massive amount of solar put on properties, because then you have these independent sites that are producing power that are independent of the grid, but they use the grid to contribute. So I don't see that as being a problem, certainly at the rate at which these things are coming on board, but I think we have to get ready for it, and I think once we have the chargers in place, and as homes get more efficient, I think you're going to see we're going to have excess. I think we're going to continually have excess power. Hydro have estimated their growth estimates for increased power are way off, are been exaggerated in my opinion. Okay.
Mary Ellen, Councillor French.
Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
We do have examples in the community of community groups that drive change. So the Food Policy Council is a good one, where citizens sort of took the lead with Squamish Can, and then through having a council rep and a staff rep have really sort of moved the dial on food policy in the district. So it's not that I am opposed to the idea of a committee, but I certainly wouldn't want to make a motion on the fly.
Okay.
So I think our staff would want some input into this. And so I guess my question through the staff is, what are our plans right now around EV chargers, and how does Matt's proposal maybe fit into that? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Staff recently applied for a grant, I believe, that Gary can update us on. So I would rather have Gary speak to the details so I don't get them.
So in terms of where we're at right now in terms of action and policy-wise, all of our new developments have, for multifamily, have requirements for charging. They need to be charging ready. So at home, should be okay. Now that's not going to address the tourism market. You're not going to drive into someone's parkade and plug into their private spot. So at facilities, that will come as we redevelop facilities. In terms of on-streets, yes, we made an NRCan application which wasn't successful because somebody else in the community was. We don't know who, but somebody else. So bad news is we didn't win, but good news, somebody else did. So there are new charging stations coming somewhere in the community
Oh,
through
wow.
the NRCan.
I haven't heard that.
The bad news on the NRCan grant application is it used to fund it 100%, now it doesn't. So there is, the municipality's got to put up money for those charging stations. BC Hydro budgets anything between 50 or 100,000 a site
For level 3 charger.
for those stations. I don't know if that's 2
Yeah.
or 3.
Level 2 is about $1,000, $1,500. I mean, I can verify that, but I mean, I can put one in my house for $800. So
They're not going to go on the street for that. Anywhere near that
I
amount of money.
know.
It's going to be. I mean, so we don't have money in this year's budget to be putting new units on the street with the grant program that's in. Like even applying for the grant, the NRCon grant now, would mean we're committing money that we don't have in the budget, so we can't make that grant application in 2019. 2020 we could. In 2020 there are options. We could go to RFP for someone to do that on the street. there are all options in 2019, but in 2020, but in 2019, it's sort of multifamily facility redevelopment. And then if we wanted to do public on-street charging stations, that's going to require some planning and some resources, which is not impossible, but not in 2019.
So Matt, have you also thought about speaking to the downtown BIA, Tourism Squamish, Chamber of Commerce? So they all represent businesses that rely on our tourism economy, and I wonder if there's some momentum there. So lots of time people always look to the district for the solution, and oftentimes the solution is in some sort of partnership. And I wonder if you've extended any of your inquiries that way.
I have talked to businesses. I have not. I've actually talked to the chamber and offered that I'd be happy to give a presentation. I haven't been asked yet. I had kind of thought that we'd take the first step would be to get a committee going to start investigating various options, start putting some pricing together for if we were to do it, what grants are available for public, for private, and what the level of interest is. So I'd actually have some hard data to go to the businesses. The municipality is supporting. We don't have any money this year in the kitty, but we have they basically passed a motion to put a committee together that will look into this and put a report together that we would then share with both the business and residences if they're interested on how to move forward and get more chargers put in. So again, I see this as being the first step. I guess another option would have been to go to the businesses first, and then again, they're going to want to know what's involved. What's the bylaws, what's, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of we need to put a report together to get an idea of what's involved, what monies are available, what the costs are, like as to Gary's question, what's it cost to put a level 2 charger in? Well, Squamish Credit Union put one in, so we have that. We know that, we can figure that out, because that will be typical of a level 2 charger. Do you know the difference between level 2 and level 3 charger? Everybody at the table know what the difference is between level 2 and level 3? Level 1 is when you just plug into the wall. That's a level 1 charger. Level 2 is if you take your dryer cable and run it out to your car, that's a level 2. It's 220, it's got higher amperage. And level 3 is a dedicated, much more expensive 3-phase charger that charges a car in 80% in 30 minutes. So it's just a huge amount. We're talking 150 to 300 kilowatts of power. Your typical plug in there would be 1.7 kilowatts. A level 2 might be 17 to 20 kilowatts. So a level 3 is so far above anything else that, and it makes it a lot more expensive. They're $100,000 a piece.
I have Councillor French, and then I want to kind of get to the point of deciding where we're going to go with this.
Okay.
So, Councillor French.
Thanks for your hard work on this. It's apparent that you've put a lot of hours into research, and it's inspirational.
Thank you.
Have you connected with Matt Sharon?
Yes, I have.
Okay, excellent. You're both on the same path.
Yeah, he's got a business of doing this, so he's basically looking for customers to buy chargers, put them in, and that's great. We're more doing this as a sort of a holistic community effort to try and just, however it happens, we get public, private funding, and whatever's available. Let's just move forward and get more chargers put in. So it's more. I have sort of a bigger purview.
I got that. And your vision for the committee, who do you see being on it?
Well, typical committees have, 10 people on them? I mean, I typically anywhere from 5. People would be volunteer. People, hopefully somebody from, 1 or 2 people from council would be on it. We'd have regular monthly meetings. The idea is that we'd each go out and find out, talk to various governments to see what's available from the provincial government. We already know they have the Clean BC program. There is funding available for that. Gary mentioned the NRC, and Narcan. There is some money available. I wasn't aware of this person. Somebody's applied to have some charging put in. And Tesla is always putting in new chargers, but those chargers are Tesla specific, and most people don't have Teslas. So again, we need to start doing some hard, on the ground work to see what funding is available, what the level of interest, survey the businesses and see what the level of interest and awareness is. So that's why my next step will be talking to BIA and talking to the Squamish Chamber, because I don't think a lot of businesses realize how important it's going to be for them to supply chargers. And this is something that doesn't have to cost them money. They can amortize it. They can put them in and charge for that power. People are prepared to pay for that. either through a parking spot or for the charging.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, and I'll make a couple of comments. One is, I don't think this table today wants to make a resolution setting up a committee. Typically, that's the purview of the mayor.
Okay.
And notwithstanding the fact that I'm sitting in her chair at the moment, I don't want to usurp that authority.
Okay. All right.
Try.
So the mayor has obviously heard your comments.
Right.
My recommendation, though, I think is going to be to refer this to staff, and I don't want you to think that we're kind of booting this off into Never Never Land, but
Right.
and personally, I have a better feel for these things after it's been through a staff filter, because there's budget issues, there's location issues, there's a whole bunch of issues around that. So my recommendation is that we have a motion directing this to staff, or referring this to staff to bring back options to council for charging stations. Mary, did you have a comment on that?
When you're done.
Okay. So something along that line, because there are budget issues, there's a number of different issues. Typically, when staff goes start into a project, though, there will be some form of public engagement, which would probably, or could, in this case, include a citizens committee of some kind. So that committee idea is not lost in that type of a motion.
Okay. Just to be clear, we're not asking for money at this point. We just want to
No,
start
I
doing
get
some
that,
investigation. Okay.
If the district's taking a role in these things, it very often costs money.
Okay, fair
So we just have to be conscious of that.
Right. Okay.
And we also have to be conscious of work plans and when we can fit that into all of the other priorities we have.
Okay.
Marilyn?
I just want to add to Councillor Reese's comment. So I guess my ask back to you is how much work are you willing to do just off the mark with a group of citizens? Because it's kind of what the Food Policy Council did. Without permission, they just, because we don't have to grant you permission to perform an action. You can do that on your own.
But if
And
we
they
have
started to bring us policy.
Right.
I think our ask to staff, council, might be, what information would be helpful to staff that your group could collect so that
Right.
we're ready for the 2020 budget season? So if
Okay.
you can help us, so our fear is that we dedicate staff time to this that staff don't have this year.
Okay.
So in the next hour, we're going to talk about our operational and strategic plan.
Okay.
But what I've heard from Mr. Buxton and I've heard from you is that we can't wait too much longer so that there needs to be some money somewhere. And so the next budget cycle is the place to do that. So if there's a group of citizens that wants to gather information, put together a proposal, and pitch that prior to us entering into our budget deliberations this fall, that would be useful. And it doesn't take up a lot of staff time, and if there's a counselor or multiple counselors that want to be involved in that, they can do that on their time. Does that?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically replicating what Squam can. I talked to Crystal Denrank about that, and so we're at basically the same. We're going to use the same format because that worked for them. So whatever format, I understood there was a motion though to move forward on that with them at some point. Is that
Not my
correct?
recollection.
Not
No,
my
no.
recollection.
So they just basically
They
it's-
formed a food policy council and brought the food policy charter to us, which
Oh.
then kicked off the work.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So that basically will be replicating that kind of process.
Yeah. So if staffing would be helpful to, if we refer this to staff to say what a citizens group can help us with and bring that back to council and we can deliberate on that. So it's not putting it on staff's plate, but just saying, if a group of citizens were going to help us, here's the information we would love to see.
I like that idea personally from the CAO's chair versus just referring to staff generally to take this on. Even that's a little bit of work, so we need to recognize that. But certainly we could spend some time on that.
So the recommended motion would be to refer to staff to bring back for a discussion on information needed from the community?
Can I answer?
Sure.
I'm just wondering if council wants us to bring it back for your endorsement, or if you would rather us just work with them and say, here's the information that would be helpful for us if we want to come back as a delegation before budget. To save our time and council's time.
Okay. So the recommended motion then is to refer it to staff to work with members of the community to further the installation of charging stations.
That sounds more to me like we're taking on working with the group to do it.
Okay.
The specific deliverable that we can do is what would we think council needs to include this in the budget, what information? And
Okay.
we can provide them with that question, and then the group can do the work. I don't know how you put that in motion.
Have you caught any of that?
But I would need help bringing back the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just looking for recognition from council. This is an issue that we need to do sooner rather than later, and somehow, how do we move that forward? So this is like, how do we move this forward? This is that question that if council recognizes it's an issue, that we can get that message out to the public.
Yeah, I get a sense we do, to be frank, but, and it's just a matter of how we actually start moving
Right.
this along. It's
Yes.
kind of working within the other things we have going on,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Will you try it?
Take it, go for it.
So the motion is that council is generally supportive of accelerating the availability of EV chargers. And to that end, ask staff to provide Mr. Blackman and his citizens group with information required by the district that would enable us to consider EV chargers in the 2020 to 2024 budget.
Terrific.
Is that good?
That's smart.
Can you repeat it one more?
No. You will have to listen to that, to the playback. Sorry.
So
That was a one-time deal.
seconded by Council French. Any further comment? Council?
Just don't want to lose sight in this. Like, I think, thinking about us funding electric chargers is one thing, but we could, I believe, require electric chargers as part of frontage improvements or parking in lieu, considering those rates and so on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about cash from the district. And so just that we're keeping those things in mind. And I think we do, to Councillor Race's earlier point, I think with everything that's going on, having yet another look at district energy utility may make sense sooner rather than later, whether that gets captured here or with some of our community greenhouse gas emissions things. I also see this as an economic development piece. So just things for us to keep in the back of our mind as we're looking at all this stuff.
And I can say one last thing. We do actually have a
We're in the middle of a motion.
Oh,
so-
okay.
Sorry. Further discussion on the motion?
No, not specifically on the motion.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackman. I hate to rush you, but we are taking
No, I
time this
appreciate
morning.
that. I'm just
So
gonna-
I'm sure there'll be more discussion about this.
Well, thank you for your time. I don't know how to turn this off, but oh, there we are. Thank you.
So if there are no questions about that, I will move on to our climb program to give council an update on, for those of you that are newish, what this is, and an update for those that saw it created last week. Okay. Those guys know what this is all about. So our CLIMB program is another acronym, but this time I remember to explain what it is, and it's the Continuous Learning Improvement Benchmarking Program. Purpose, we want to grow and sustain a culture of learning and continual improvement. When we started out with this program, it was last term and I was tasked with creating a benchmarking program in the organization. And when we started looking at it as a team and going out for requests for proposal to get a consultant to help me work with it, I got a lot of proposals back around Six Sigma, balanced scorecard, systems to impose on the organization to measure things. And we had tried as an organization to use the balanced scorecard in the past. We worked very hard on our own system using Excel sheets and action plans. And ultimately what it came down to was a top-down imposition to measure staff wasn't working. We didn't have a culture wherein our staff understood the value of measurement. It felt more like an evaluation. It was the first time a lot of people had faced the idea of benchmarking. It was this nebulous word that people are not intimidated by, but it's like, oh, this is more work for me to do. So I worked, as most of you know, with a facilitator that gave me a proposal around how about building something from the ground up with employees to really shift the culture around measurement and the purpose of it and the value. And the purpose of measurement really is for optimization and continual improvement. And that facilitator, Catherine Rockendale, worked very hard with me last year. We met with every single department and went through how do we change this, how do we change our culture, and how do we create a program that disseminates the idea of continual improvement throughout the organization. And it was quite positive. We got a lot of enthusiasm from employees. It was really employee built. So the objectives of the program, we want to improve effectiveness of processes and service in our organization. And employees understand that, and they buy into it, and they're very proud of what they do, and they want to continually improve. We just never formalized it as an organization or made the link to the word benchmarking. We want to create time and support for a continuous improvement cycle, so recognizing that culture shift does take time and it's smaller increments. And we want to increase organizational benchmarking capacity ultimately. We love our word clouds, so just another visual. The cycle of continual improvement is provided there. It's quite small. I will read it out to you. For those that were on council previously, we had several different iterations of this cycle. We started out with a process map that was very linear. We then went to like a bullseye, then we went to a cog, and it was all very complicated and overwrought. And I should let council know that each department has a climb champion, and we specifically asked that the climb champions not be management staff. We want this again to be led from, you know, the people that have the best idea of how to improve things, or those people doing the work. And it doesn't mean to say it's not management, but we wanted it to come from all levels of the organization. So every department has a climb champ. We meet on a regular basis. And this is our latest iteration of the cycle to try and make it more simple and memorable. So the first one is, how can we do this better? So we identify an opportunity. The next is question the process. Let's give it a try. Let's try and do something different to improve. And then executing the change, recognizing that's rocky, this is new. And then evaluating, so measuring the results and the outcomes. So that worked, we improved it, or maybe not so much, that didn't work. But either way, the last slice of the pie is to celebrate the learning. We want to create a culture where it's safe for employees to make mistakes, it's safe for employees to come up with new ideas and learn from those mistakes. Learning is learning, whether it went well or whether it didn't. And then the cycle continues. So CLIMB is a key goal of the organizational plan in our effective service. So this year, the goal specifically is nurture our organizational culture of continual improvement through the CLIMB program. So the CLIMB program started late in 2017, so it really kicked off in 2018. And last year was really the building of it, the development of the CLIMB Champ team, kind of bouncing around in this new program and how is it working. This year we want to continue to energize it, keep the momentum high. We have a lot of new employees, even, you know, we have a lot of seasonal employees and part-time employees. And then just depending on the department, there are some employees that haven't yet quite embraced it or been involved. And so we have a whole plan to continue this year in terms of continuing to sustain the program. And how do we do that? So leading our culture of CLIMB, the champions, so it really comes out of my office, but I rely heavily on the CLIMB champions, those team members that work throughout the organization. Natasha Goldbeck and specifically Devin Guest, who you just saw, has been a key individual that's been working with me very directly to coordinate, organize, lead, keep me focused on this program as I get taken in all kinds of different directions. So I really have to lean on Devin and Natasha for their help to get us to this place. All staff meetings and videos, so these are the next steps that we're going to employ. We have all staff meetings scheduled in June. Sandra's going to do her magic. We're going to have a little video clip so that anytime somebody is onboarding and a new employee we can show that to them without me having to go to the department or the climb champ having to do it. Department focused and our leadership team meetings, we're going to make it an ongoing agenda item to keep it top of mind. And lunch and learn skill building, we're actually bringing a facilitator in to talk about process improvement and how our climb program and our culture will dovetail with that. CAO update, you've probably seen some climb stories, and our climb champs came up with a hashtag, Let's Climb, which is pretty fun, and we've actually got stickers. I'll hand them out to you. They just arrived hot off the press. Culture change really is about sharing stories. So we don't quite yet have a repository for our stories or official, matrix or place to compile them all, which we're working on. But ultimately, culture change is in storytelling, and that keeps it top of mind. So somebody doesn't have to click through the hub to look for climb stories, even though we eventually want that tool there. But when you hear someone say, hey, that's a climb project, or climb, which we're starting to hear, that's when I know that the culture is shifting. And celebrating successes and celebrating learning. So we are going to also post, so far you've only seen successes on the CAO update, but you're going to see some of our mistakes and how we've learned, and that's going to be the hashtag oops. Got to keep it light, right? So I'll give you an example of some of our projects to date. Now, we have a spectrum of benchmarking in our organization, and as you know, in Public Works, we're part of a national benchmarking system that is really empirical in terms of measuring infrastructure and public works operations and how we stand up against other similar organizations and best practices, and then we optimize and focus our maintenance and our programming and actions on optimizing those services. Right down to things like corporate services, which is a bit more nebulous in terms of benchmarking. We can count things. So one of the stories I like to talk about is, it's called the complaints, but it's really feedback from the community, our system, complaint system. And over time, our complaints, quote unquote, have gone up. Now, does that mean that citizens are less happy with us? We don't know. We don't know the story behind that number. It could mean that because we're getting better and better at responding to people through that system, that we're training our citizens that that's how they can reach out to us, so we're getting more people using it. It could be just that our population's growing, so is it just a ratio? So we don't want to count things when they don't mean anything. And so there are departments where it's a bit more difficult to nail down specific benchmarks. And that's where the culture shift really comes in around continual improvement. So instead of saying, well, we don't have the public works system, it's too difficult, we don't really know what we're measuring, is getting that shift happening so that people understand, or our team members understand, that they can start benchmarking. So the first example is in legislative services, and this was recently in the CAO update. They recognized that an issue was that common language out of legislative services, as much as an in-camera meeting, committee of the whole, regular meeting, special meeting, does every employee know what that means? And legislative rules or legislation that employees need to follow, do they know? So legislative services put out, I keep looking back for the team and they've left me. Strategic plan, we got stuff to do. They put out a survey, and it was a quiz, basically. And I have till noon, or, okay, thank you. They put out a quiz, basically. And even I didn't get 10 out of 10. Not even I, but you would think, right? And anyway, so what legislative services did with that is they came up with education and information, and now when every new employee is onboarded, they do a 101 on legislation. And they've also worked with departments on the 101. So they understood the gaps. So where departments, we take advantage, we took it for granted that somebody from recreation would understand, say, the MTI bylaw. Well, not the case. And so this is an area where they can now benchmark that, because they can send the quiz out again and see, have their efforts improved employees' knowledge on leg services. And that's a culture shift. So eventually, in terms of benchmarking in a department like that, or generally in the organization, we want it to be robust, and in terms of citizen satisfaction and that meaningful benchmarking in terms of really improving our organization. It can be something small, it can be something huge, but really at this time we're rewarding it all because it's a culture shift. Recently, you had Public Works come forward, Ben and Kareen, around improving the bulk water rates and basing it on disparity in revenues versus the cost of providing the services was identified, and that was through a survey of other municipalities and benchmarking against them. That also has been impactful in terms of our water conservation and educating people on the value of water and using potable versus non-potable. And my last example I'll give you is the unit for Business World installation. Sorry, this is a little small, but this system is an implementation of our new accounts payable, and it's new functionality that was not available in our old systems that we had with Maze. We have electronic invoice approvals now, so rather than a paper invoice circulating through the building for people's signatures, stapling it to the purchase order, it will come up in my email and I get to see the invoice, it's been scanned, I see who's all approved it, I see the PO behind it, and I can click to approve. And I know to a lot of people out there in the world that seems like, wow, really, it took you that long, but yes, and many municipalities are in the same boat. As we're learning with our TTP, switching over to technology is a Herculean effort, and so I can see why previous groups of employees were reticent to do this, because it's a huge effort, but it is paying off in spades. And this is just one element of the TTP. We have many, many more that we can celebrate, and many, many more that we'll be installing and implementing through the organization. So as mentioned, it is a key goal in our organizational plan. And throughout all of our operation, as well as the strategic plan. And this is our new sticker, and I brought this in. That is it. I am open to questions. Thank you very much.
Council, questions or comments? Council Britton, thank you.
So at the council table, we deal with decisions that sometimes have like 25 or 50 or 100-year consequence. And so I don't know, I feel like there's less tolerance for learning, maybe. You should know beforehand and get it right the first time. And you know, my sense is there can be liability issues with sort of learning in public or acknowledging your learning. So, but seeing the importance of culture and recognizing our position as you've gone through this, is there anything in particular that you think council could or should be doing better or differently to assist in some of this?
That's a great question. And through the chair, with last council, we worked very hard together, staff and council, to enable staff making mistakes. Last council, this came out of council tasking me with benchmarking and creating a culture of innovation. And the definition of innovation that council nailed down is the idea of continuous improvement in a government situation. Like, we don't build iPhones or self-driving cars, we are a service provider. So continuous learning and continuous improvement really is our definition, your definition of innovation. We worked very hard, and I felt from staff's point of view, and the team did as well, that council really shifted in terms of enabling staff to be transparent about mistakes and providing debriefing, providing us the opportunity to come forward with mistakes, as long as we came forward with what did we learn and what can we get out of it. Came out of a very long ago era of blaming staff in public, which is kind of a cowardly way out that I haven't seen in a long time, and certainly that shift happened last council. So to maintain that momentum around enabling mistakes and recognizing that we're learning from them, and our responsibility is to demonstrate that learning and not take it as permission to be slapdash, which is not what we're doing.
Councillor French, Councillor Stoner.
So a comment. You really caught my attention when you were talking about feedback is equivalent to complaints, and I love, because words matter, how we're framing it in a way that works for us and is more positive than maybe old, outdated ways. So where the public wants to register a complaint, for us, it's feedback and it's valuable and we'll take it and we'll use it to improve our delivery service in the future. And then we have the same situation where learning opportunity is the equivalent of a mistake. And then to throw in hashtag oops to lighten up the whole scenario just totally makes it work. So I love that that's where we're going, because it gives us an opportunity to really reframe how the public, the voters, our constituents view us as an organization, where we're a group of people who care and we're concerned about the future, not just as a group of people, but right down to the individual. So I'm really encouraged by that.
Councillor Stone.
Thanks. Also, thanks for the history component of it. I think that's really helpful in terms of the approach that was taken previously and the innovation that took place in order to come up with this program is really exciting. My question is around the lessons learned component and the storytelling, which I think is really, really critical in terms of culture shift. One of the components that I always find really challenging with continuous learning projects is, where do the lessons learned get stored and shared over time, especially if you have a fairly high turnover rate with staff? And any thoughts on where we're going with that? Also, from my curiosity perspective, I don't have any great solutions. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd have some great solutions.
I keep thinking.
That is definitely on the agenda right now, and in fact, the main thing that the Climb Champs are working on is how do we capture this formally in a way that's useful. You know, the spirit of it, the culture of it is out there with, you know, the stickers and the CAO update, but how do we formalize it so that the learning happens once and then you can move on, is something that we're working on. We do have the hub that we can use. Different departments do have repositories for their own processes that they improve, but to be candid, it's something that is part of this program that is the next step.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I think part of where I start to lean is it may not always be necessary either. I think we always have this drive or this want to formalize things, and sometimes a culture shift is just what is needed, and the formalization piece isn't. There's definitely some component there, there's a balance. I always feel really challenged when people, when we try something again and they're like, oh, we tried that 2 years ago, we tried that 3 years ago, and it's not going to work. It's like, well, the context has changed, and so sometimes it is worth trying the same thing twice in a different scenario. So just keeping that in mind, that maybe that isn't really fully necessary in this space, but it's interesting to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will make a comment, and the CAO referred to it. In my time on council, I think the culture shift has been quite extensive, because there was a time when staff, I think, were frankly almost afraid to bring initiatives to council because of the reaction that they might get in public particularly. And it took a while, I think, for staff to gain the confidence in council, and for different councillors over time to learn how to deal with this, particularly in public, to the sense that not every idea is going to be accepted by council. Some will accept, some we won't, some will modify. But not to take it personally and not to be critical. We want the ideas to come forward. That took a while. That was not automatic. And so it's very much and very important how council deals with these things when they come to us, and hopefully in a constructive and positive vein, even if we're not following the initiative. So it's taken a while to get here, but I'm happy to say I think we are at that point. So, any further comments? Is that your hand going up or not?
No, I was just giving Linda the thumbs up.
Well, everybody's good? Thank you, Ms. Glenday.
Thank you very much.
There being nothing else on the agenda, I will look for a motion to terminate. Councillor French, Councillor Stoner seconds. All in favour? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So Ms. Glenday, the balance of the time in the agenda is yours, and I'll let you organize the last two items as you see fit.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I would like to start with the strategic and organizational plan, and then move into the climb program update after that. Wait, start?
You waiting for me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm like protocol, do I? Good morning, Council. Today I'm here with our team to present to you our initial update on Council's strategic plan that you adopted at the beginning of your term. What I'm going to provide for you is a very high-level overview of the action items that staff have identified to deliver your strategic goals as outlined in this plan. The format we've used that you've seen in the agenda is what's called the RACI model, so I'll just briefly go over that for the benefit of the audience to understand what that means. I'll give you, in the spreadsheet that you've been given and that is on the agenda for the public, is a status update in terms of the action items. As you can appreciate, many of them are scheduled for this year, just getting underway based on the fact that this is a new plan and we've recently adopted, or you have recently adopted the financial plan. Next, I'm going to talk about our organizational plan, which is essentially the operation of our organization outside of the strategic plan. So there is the strategic plan, whose purpose is to move the dial on the OCP according to Council's priorities. We also have an organization that delivers on municipal services day after day, year over year. We wanted to, as an organization, capture those priorities as well and have organizational goals. So I will present that to you and then talk about next steps. So just for those in the audience, the RACI model, which your Excel spreadsheet or tracking matrix is based on, is the individual that's responsible is essentially the person that's leading the project. The accountable person is the person that's ultimately answerable to the deliverable. So as an example, if there's a general manager that's leading a project, such as Gary on the housing, I'm ultimately accountable to that. Consulted are those subject matter experts that need to be involved, and the communication with those subject matter experts is two-way. Currently, the Excel sheet that you have indicates a lot of internal consultation. This spreadsheet is an iterative and fluid document as we start digging more into these action items, and likely will include more and more of the community as well. And then the informed is any individuals that are affected by the outcome. It's stating the obvious to say that on all of these strategic goals that Council needs to be informed and often consulted, but I didn't want to put a column in where Council was listed beside every single one. So you have in front of you your reporting matrix. I can bring it up and blow it up on the screen if you like. My objective today really is to indicate the high-level actions that staff have determined we need to deliver on to meet your strategic goals, to indicate the staff that are leading those actions. I want to get Council feedback on those actions to make sure that they meet your expectations in terms of what we will be doing to deliver on your goals. The idea today is not necessarily to dig into those goals specifically and get into that kind of detail because we don't have the time. The plan, I've been speaking to Mayor Elliott, is in July to have a council workshop around the strategic plan and in advance of our next budget cycle to ensure that there's alignment, to ensure that there's capacity and understand in terms of resourcing as well as the strategic plan, how we can move forward together as a team to deliver on that. So with that in mind, again, today is just more of a high-level overview. I will point out a few of the actions just to highlight. Our baseline GHG tracking and community energy and emissions plan, which is under the first goal to adopt a plan. Council did endorse hiring a new sustainability coordinator to take on that side of the strategic plan. We're currently in the process of beginning the recruiting for that based on the recent adoption of the budget, which is extraordinarily exciting. We're still hopeful we can get it done by the end of 2019, but we will keep council in the loop because recruiting, sometimes we're not entirely in control of how long it takes, and it often takes longer than we'd like it to, so we'll keep you in the loop on that. The second goal about increasing the diversion rate of waste from the landfill, implement the zero waste action plan, public education and engagement is the action. Our sustainability coordinator, Shannon White, is well underway with that. As council knows, she's been in front of you with that bylaw. As well, on May 28th, Ms. White will be coming forward to council to speak to you about the single-use plastic, specifically the straw and bag ban, the action plan to put a bylaw in place and engage the public and stakeholders. So that will be coming to you in detail at the end of the month. Housing affordability and diversity under the established and affordable housing governance structure. We have been working with Sea to Sky Community Services based on council's endorsement to come up with a partnering agreement around managing the existing units, as well as working with us on the Buckley Avenue housing project that's being built and underway right now. The organizational options that says reviewing it with Sea to Sky Community Services, the housing strategy will be coming to you in June that further explains the long-term work on this. There is likely a line here that's missing around that longer-term view that we don't want to pin specifically to one agency at this time. Just for clarity on that one. And a couple more if you'll indulge me. As I mentioned, so under, if you flip over the page, ensure that an additional 125 affordable purpose-built rental units are built by 2022. The first action is to design and construct the Buckley Avenue Affordable Housing Project, which is 76 units, and that is well underway. The detailed design is underway, and our second round of funding has come in from BC Housing, so that's a very exciting project that we're moving forward right now. In terms of economy and local jobs, under generate a net increase of employment lands, the zoning bylaw amendments are moving forward with our planning team working on that specifically as a project. And as council's aware, but maybe not the public who weren't at the meeting, the quick surgical updates to the business park have been in front of council. And then last, I'll just point out under neighborhood connectivity and public spaces, the two sub-area plans that planning have targeted are the Loggers East sub-area plan that they're undertaking currently, and their recommendation is the Garibaldi Estates for the second plan, but we look to council's feedback on that, whether it's today or in July. So that's council's strategic plan update. I will perhaps hand it over to questions before I move on to the organizational plan.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, firstly, the under strategic, or the plan of our environment, our strategic plan refers at the top bullet under that heading to community greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets, whereas your chart here refers to corporate. I just wanted to refer you to that. I think we did have a consensus that it is the community picture that we wish to have in focus. Secondly, under the economy and local jobs.
Excuse me just a second.
Sorry.
Where was that point?
That's under under the planet and our
farther down.
environment.
Okay.
Yes, the third heavy.
It's
It's listed here.
community up here, our corporate goal as an actual organization.
Oh, thank you, Mary Ellen. So I'm corrected on that point. So they're both included. My second observation was that under economy and jobs, you have referred to the zoning bylaw amendments, and you've also referenced the business park planning discussions. I'd like to suggest that that is just the two items of several that are really ongoing. And the other is the Marine Action Strategy implementation. Among the short-term implementation items, I've looked through the plan and there are 4 recommendations specifically concerning waterfront lands or waterfront facilities location issues. And in addition, the employment land strategy still has some ongoing implementation effort that are quite important. They involve large acreage. And finally, the Forest Industry District of Squamish MOU also involves large acreage, up to 10 acres. This is what Lot 69 represented. So that I just wanted to emphasize that in addition to what we're doing immediately with the zoning bylaw review and the business plan work, there are large pieces out there concerning specifically medium industrial lands, if you like, that we'll need to keep in focus because of their scale and their importance for infrastructure.
Thank you through the chair. That's an excellent point. Appreciate that. Definitely our economic development officer has a very comprehensive action plan. And thank you for pointing that out. This is not a comprehensive list of the actions that refer to employment lands.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to confirm or clarify, so we have a job posting for a sustainability coordinator, but you mentioned earlier the potential to mandate parking with EV charging. There's been discussion around step 5 code and where that might fit in with our various bylaws. So are we sort of, as we're rewriting these bylaws and those sorts of things, those policies, are we sort of waiting for this position to be filled before we really dig into some of those aspects? Or are we, is everyone really thinking about those things right away as well as we're redesigning those?
Through the chair, in terms of things like the building code and step 5, and those filters are throughout the organization in terms of staff, like planning and building. EV chargers specifically, I can say that is not currently assigned to anyone, and something like that likely would be this new position. Delving further into these actions has yet to come. So again, this is a high level, like we're on it. This is our first step for this action plan. Further updates to council will include those details, so likely the work plan of that individual. So we see hiring this person, and the biggest action is getting that plan in place, but at the same time, what does that plan implementation look like? So thank you for the question.
Yeah, this discussion today is intended at just a bit higher level than perhaps some of the detail. So, Councillor French.
I just want to share that under neighborhood connectivity and public spaces, with the Garibaldi Estates identified as a prime candidate for neighborhood plan, I absolutely support that. A neighborhood that is in transition in many ways, increased density. Each time we see one of the large lots change hands, the new owners are often putting a carriage house or some kind of suite, and I think this neighborhood is definitely right for that plan.
And I didn't anticipate that. Were you intending on having a decision whether or not we go ahead with Garibaldi Estates today, or just feedback on that concept?
Pardon me, given our time constraints today, through the chair, I think it would be best to have more fulsome discussion about those in July. Staff are not working on, obviously, the second one at this time, and I think a more fulsome discussion is warranted. I definitely appreciate hearing the feedback today. I did ask for it, but in terms of the decision and more detail, I think July is my recommendation.
Good, because I think there are other areas which are options, and I think we would want to consider options as well as perhaps that one. Anything further? Carry on.
Okay, thank you. So our organizational plan looks very familiar, I'm sure, to your strategic plan, and that is on purpose. In terms of consistency for our staff, that said, my biggest message to staff is that this does not compete with the strategic plan, but rather overlaps and works in conjunction with. So where does the organizational plan fit? This graphic, pardon me, is on our website and at the front of your strategic plan, but this graphic has an extra circle. And that is on the right-hand side, and you'll see it's touching the council strategic plan. So as I indicated, and for the audience's benefit, I know council knows this, is that the council strategic plan is designed to move the dial on the OCP. Now, staff use the OCP in our day-to-day work in terms of policy, so we're always looking at this OCP policy to ensure that staff recommendations align. The organizational plan really captures our operational, work that may or may not be in council strategic plan. There's definitely an overlap. When I get into the specific pillars of the operational plan, it will become more evident. But the purpose of the organizational plan really is we came up with 4 pillars as a leadership group that really we see transcending councils. So this is our organization as a municipal service organization, and those foundations would never change from an operational point of view. Whereas council strategic plan may pivot through terms based on community priorities in the official community plan. Last term, so some councillors may not be familiar with this, we went out to our staff, and there's a sort of fairly well-known NASA story where apparently it was John Kennedy, but I'm not sure who, walked into NASA and ran into a custodian who was mopping the floor and said, "Oh, what do you do here at NASA?" And this individual said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." So the purpose at NASA was really focused and clear, and every employee felt that they were contributing to that purpose. So we went out to our employees last year and said, if someone was to ask you that question, how would you answer it? And we got a myriad of answers, short ones, long ones, emotional ones, funny ones, and we created a word cloud. And this is what came up. So community was the biggest word, helping, place, make. So now we refer to this as our purpose. And we like the visual as opposed to words. Seems to resonate. So this year, in terms of our organizational plan, we've worked with the general managers to come up with the foundations. We then brought it to the rest of the department heads to discuss those pillars, the foundations, the specific strategic goals. And we had 2 workshops with them to put together the organizational plan. Following today, after presenting it to council, we will be rolling it out to the rest of the organization, although informally, managers have been working with their staff to develop their action plans in conjunction with the organizational plan. So this is what we presented to our management. So what is it? It's an organization-specific plan. It's a foundation to align our work to 4 pillars. Long-term foundational principles, so we refer to that as a lens. So a lens through which we look at our work, so whether you're attached to a specific goal or not. And then the goals are specific organizational wide goals. So these are goals that will touch the entire organization. So there are many goals, many action plans going on within these pillars, but the goals that you see in the organizational plan are those that at some point will likely touch for sure every department head, every department, even if it doesn't touch every employee. And it brings them to the surface so people know that they're a priority for us to achieve this year and in the next few years. For clarity, in terms of council strategic plan, we also communicate that, again, it's a priority resource, how we resource to meet the priorities, and it is also a lens through which we look at our work. So there may not be a specific goal that somebody is attached to, an employee is attached to, but nonetheless, those 4 priority areas are the lens through which we do our work. So the strategic plan and the organizational plan don't compete, but they serve different purposes. So what we ask the managers is if your action plans, they should be aligned with either the strategic plan the organizational plan, or both? And if they're not, then why are you doing it? And the feedback that I've received we have received has been quite positive. I think the staff are very excited to understand. We talk a lot about prioritizing work. Instead of just doing busy work, we hear a lot that we're too busy. And these are both tools, the strategic plan from council and our organizational plan, to prioritize our work, to work smarter, to work better, and to achieve the priorities that council's laid out for us, and to also achieve those goals as a municipal service delivery organization. So this has been provided on the agenda and to the public, but I'll just highlight how we came up with the foundation. So our number one is people. We're an organization of people. And we thought about the mission being people first, but we thought that was too close to our friends in the South. So we came up with we value and appreciate one another. We want our employees to feel valued first and foremost. One of the goals you'll see on there is our human resources strategy. So the reason that this is on here is that this is an organizational-wide goal. So HR will be leading it. Our new HR director, who I will take the opportunity to introduce, Anita. Did you say hi? This is a strategy that will touch the entire organization. So at some point, HR or the consultants that we employ will go out to the rest of the organization and interview managers so that department heads see this goal, employees see this goal, and they know that when it comes across their desk, it's a requirement that they prioritize it. But yes, this is Anita. I don't know how to say her name. Blake. Anita Blake, and has quite a depth in human resources, labor management, labor law. She's actually a lawyer before she came into a different world of human resources, and we're really, really excited to have her here. So,
thank you. I'm very excited to join the district, and I'm excited to be working on your new strategic workforce planning, preparing for collective bargaining, and employee engagement, and all the great initiatives that are already underway. So thank you very much.
Well, and welcome. And some of us actually love lawyers here.
That was a shameless plug.
The second foundational pillar is effective service. We are a service organization. We want to empower our employees to provide that service, and our key phrase is deliver outstanding service, and the fact that it's DOS is no accident. It's on purpose. You'll see under here that one of the goals is the CLIMB program, which I'll be providing an update to you shortly. And one of our major goals is our technology transformation program. Again, this is a program that at some point will be touching every quarter of the organization, and we need the organization to understand that this is a goal that is a priority for everybody. A detailed...
Sorry to interrupt, but do you have that on slide?
Yeah, sorry.
Just for the public.
Yeah,
just to,
thanks.
Yep.
There it is. Oops, no, where am
You want
I?
that?
There we go.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for that. A detailed, we call it the TTP update and presentation, will be coming to council. That's a huge undertaking. It's an entire overhaul of our technology and financial system, and modernizing our organization. And in terms of effective service, we'll have a huge impact, and we're already seeing quite a few impacts that I'll cover one of them in our CLIMB update. Stewardship, as employees of the district and public servants to our community, we recognize that we're the stewards, or we're responsible for long-range resiliency and sustainability of our assets. So that includes financial assets and infrastructure assets. One of the goals under there is keeping up with our asset management plans and our master plans to ensure that we have the long-range planning in place for all of our infrastructure, and the shorter-term goals is to finish those master plans that currently don't exist. And finally, building bridges. This is to prioritize our understanding of and learning as it pertains to truth and reconciliation with our Squamish Nation community, and also to recognize that we have many community partners that we want to continue to build relationships with and work with to leverage providing service to the community. So We do have a goal in there about our continual learning about Squamish Nation and forging and nurturing our relationship with them. And then as well, one that I'm really quite impressed with is our IT stepped forward and talked about growing our open data program as a way to reach out to our community and work in partnership with our citizens and community agencies. So that's our organizational plan. We're quite excited about it. Like I said, I've heard great feedback. Bob Smith is an example, Director of Public Works, has said that his team is quite excited about it because they see themselves in it. Some of us are very heavily focused on the organizational plan. Some of us are very heavily focused on the strategic plan. You can see the leads in the strategic plan. It's very heavy on engineering and planning and economic development, as it should be, based on your goals. And then the organizational plan is very heavy on HR, finance, corporate services, public works.
Question? Councilor Anderson.
I wonder if you might be able to remind me under effective service what the acronym UBW stands for?
Unit for Business World. Did I get that? Yes. We use acronyms so much that we forget that it's an acronym. So Unit for Business World. And I will talk briefly about that in our climate update. It is our key component of our finance system. And part of it is already live in terms of budgeting and invoicing and accounts payable. Thank you for the question.
Under stewardship, launching the OCP monitoring program is referred to. I don't recall what we had in the last OCP as regards a monitoring program or chapter. My question is, what experience do we have in this? Is this a new enterprise, a monitoring program for our OCP?
Through the chair, the short answer is yes. So our last OCP required monitoring, but it wasn't something that we at the time had the capacity to do. We have a team of people that are working on this. Our planner, Sarah McJanet, worked on this project when she was a planner in Whistler. They've got a very robust monitoring program. Our GIS supervisor, Dan, economic development, as well as communications. So we have a whole team together. And this is the program wherein we are using Townfolio, so the online dashboard, to indicate, and we've chosen a key number of monitoring measurements out of the OCP, although not all of them. We're starting in bite-sized chunks, and the team is well underway with that project, and we're looking forward to bringing council an update in the near future.
Councilor Pepinville.
So just for my, and maybe you can clarify, I guess in my mind, the strategic plan is everyone's primary purpose. And so just like in the NASA example, if there's a custodian here, they're doing what they're doing for the planet and the environment, for housing, affordability, and diversity. And you know, the line may not be immediately obvious, but there's always a line there. That's what we're all serving. And in my mind, this is how we will accomplish those things. And it's a very important, and you know, I really like what I see here in terms of how we would get there. But I feel like there's some value in just it helps me understand if we're all in our different ways pointing towards those same 4 buckets at the end of the day. And that's why we're all here. And so we wouldn't do stewardship just because we're doing stewardship to serve the planet and environment, housing, affordability, and diversity. And do I have that understanding correct, or would you have a different perspective?
Through the chair, respectfully, I have a slightly different perspective. Absolutely, council strategic plan is something, it's the lens through which we all look through, as well as our organizational plan. The challenge in a local government context or government context with a strategic plan is different from a private sector, is that a strategic plan in the private sector really is ultimately what you're going for, the whole organization. In conjunction with council strategic plan priorities, at the end of the day, we have people practices that, as an organization, we always have to follow. We are stewards of infrastructure that never can be forgotten. And that's why they overlap, but we still, as an organization, feel we need to capture those foundations. So we are a service organization. Yes, they are aligned because everything's aligned with our OCP vision, but I wouldn't say that the organizational plan is necessarily how we achieve the strategic plan. I think they're more side by side, our goals as an organization and as a council. So we deliver on council's strategic plan, and as an organization we need our own goals to keep municipal services going. I don't know that we're that far apart in our thoughts, but how we communicate it to our staff is slightly different.
Councillor Silverman.
I just want to do a quick gut check because I think we did something similar with the strategic plan in terms of looking at the delivery dates for the goals. So I see about 2/3 of them are currently staged for the end of 2019. And knowing that resources are tight and capacity is tight, I just want to do a gut check if that's realistic.
We feel that most of them are, because if you'll see as an example, the OCP monitoring program, it's launch it, it's not finish it. Establish initial quarterly financial reporting by September, that's aspirational, absolutely. And because this is the first iteration, staff currently are working on their specific action plans aligned with this, and I think once that starts to happen, we'll get a better sense of those dates. But thank you, because yes, it's aspirational.
Go ahead.
I'm a big proponent of simplicity, and so it is great to see this plan also in a similar format to our strategic plan. It's clear, it's concise, and what I'm really pleased to hear is that our staff can all see themselves in one of these plans. And I think the thing that connects us all is the OCP, and we're all working towards that evolution of community and what Squamish looks like in the future. So, so great. I actually feel like we have an exciting 3 years left in our term. So appreciate the effort.
3.5.
Okay.
Anything else? So, carry on.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to clarify, I wasn't sure how articulate I was in answer to Councillor Pettingill's question, is that the view of the organizational plan definitely was OCP aligned, so that both plans align in terms of achieving what council has directed us to do. We're excited about it. We're excited about the strategic plan. We're excited about both, to have the focus and the ability to prioritize and really have substantial action plans with our staff. Sorry.
Go for your jacket.
It'll look really good on.
Next item on the agenda is staff reports. Item 4 sub 1, summer concerts update, Norman Rudy's. Ms. Guest.
Good morning, Mayor, Chair, and Council. My name is Donna Guest. I'm the Manager of Arts and Culture here at the District of Squamish. For those watching today, I am here to support Council's just-in-time learning and to talk a little bit about the summer event season and generally what our policies, bylaws, and process look like in supporting community events or special events, as the policy calls them.
And I'll just interrupt you there, just because we did speak ahead of time about how this will be presented, and there's sort of 3 elements to this to give council a heads up. One is the policy that we have in place now and how we got to where we are today. The second is the event at Norman Rudy's that you'll hear more about. And the third is where we might go with policy in the future. But with respect to the event, understand that that is delegated authority. So there actually are no decision points related to that event before council today. This is provision of information. And then ask questions, of course, get the information. But we're not deciding anything about that event. It's dealt with by staff.
Correct, yes. So you're in a lovely position where there's no decision points tonight. However, feedback's always welcome. Pardon me. So just at a high level, I want to talk briefly about the role of local government in event planning, specifically for community events. Really the two markers are community safety and asset and infrastructure protection. I think that's the role of the district to reduce exposure to risk and help people through that planning process. Our bylaws and our policies reflect and they help guide us on what would look reasonable to community members within Squamish today. However, that's very much not our service model. We work from a model of facilitating, where we build, connect, and educate with those mostly volunteer members in our community that spend time putting on special and community events for our citizens. May they be sport, arts and culture, wide variety. This is what we do well. We've developed a reputation within the community of good management, where we balance reducing bureaucracy but still working within our legislative authority. And then just quickly, what does it look like? The process overview. And so I draw your attention to mission-born Canadian artist Carly Rae Jessop. Because generally within our community, it starts with a phone call. Someone's got an idea or something's starting to percolate, and they pick up the phone and they call me and they say, this is my idea. And we work together and we kind of massage it a little bit, we connect them with the right sources, we feel things out, and we then put them through the event process, which looks like a formal application. And that formal application really is a catch-all. It's the conduit in which we use to collect the pertinent information that then goes out to the relevant agencies and stakeholders. And so it could be RCMP, Vancouver Coastal Health, the BIA, tourism, the litany of interest groups within our community that would need to know or want to know about the potential event going on. We then create a list of requirements which act as the checklist that fold underneath the event permit. Traffic management plans, risk management plans. It always includes events, it always includes event insurance, and it always includes a damage deposit. And then after those are collected, we communicate that out to the event organizers, and then they go away and work on those requirements. Work. And then within 30 days, they deliver back all those requirements, and that, in exchange, we offer an event permit. And we start the whole process all over again for annual events. It's lovely. Requirements are scaled to the size of the event and based on anticipated impact. So it's not always cut and dry. Workshops that we have offered within the community, we offer so often, and I know so many people around the table know this, but the events that are near and dear to Squamish's heart are founded and run by volunteers. And so when we see the same question or the same barrier to entry within our community and event organizers, we try to obviously answer those questions and remove those barriers. So we work through some workshops that hope to educate and expand those volunteers and their capacity for delivering experiences to our community. Waste management, how to close a road, the community grant process. These are all workshops that we have run in the past. And so looking ahead, since the role of events became formalized within the district in 2013, there has been a big change in the landscape. We have seen more grassroots volunteer-run events kind of move away and pave the way for more corporate or professionally organized events. The department annually permits anywhere between 65 and 80. This is anything from a wedding in the park all the way up to Constellation Festival type things. It is time for a policy review. In the fourth quarter of 2019, we'll be looking at the community events policy and likely the fees and charges policy. And given Council's strategic plan, I see policy work around that aligning with the placemaking and public spaces aspect. I also see the community event policy moving towards more language about Squamish being an eventful city and not necessarily rules and guidelines around people protection and asset protection. Where we're identifying a gap in policy right now is within the major planned event realm, kind of provincially and federally referred to as MPEs. And within the district, we have had, obviously, Squamish Valley Music Festival. Dancing Bear has existed within our community for the last, I believe, 6 or 7 years. The Constellation Festival, which I know everyone around the table is very familiar with right now. And then we'll get to Norman Rudy's, which came on our radar in mid to late March. And we identified a number of requirements that triggered the need for staff oversight within our event permit process. And so we'll take a look at that. So Norman Rudy's event is called Backyard Après. It's scheduled for Saturday, June 29th from 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. Its capacity is going to be approximately 2,500 people. And it will be hosted and produced by the Gibbons Group. And however, it will also be produced on Polygon's land. So Norman Rudy's is zoned CD 12, zoned for entertainment, and has hosted other sizable events such as the Squamish Mountain Bike Race. The Polygon land is zoned for assembly and the Backyard Après fits within the approved use. The purple line that you will see, if your vision is exceptional, is the purple line around the perimeter of what will be their event space. The yellow line we're working through right now with the Liquor Control Board to see if that's actually required. And so that's going to be their footprint. It is identified as a less environmentally sensitive area than other parts of the golf course and is buffered by vegetation from the residential neighbors. So having reviewed this with the event producers, some or all of their requirements that they will need to satisfy in order to receive an event permit is a traffic management plan, which will be focused on shuttles and bike valets and reducing impact to the immediate community around Norman Rudy's. A waste management plan, identifying, that they are within a green space. Fire and emergency plan, it is the environment in which we operate these days, and with dry weather and events comes extracurricular activities that involve smoking, and we need to mitigate that as much as possible. Neighborhood notification outline. it's not so much a communication plan, and they are within their hours of operation, existing within our noise bylaw. But the organizers and the district definitely see a need to communicate effectively to the neighboring community, as this will be a new experience for them. Vancouver Coastal Health permit will be required, as there'll be temporary food vendors, and a BC liquor permit. They have applied or are in the process of applying for an extension, and that will go through the planning department for additional comment. Proof of insurance, and that folded together becomes requirements for their event permit. Yes, please.
If I might, through the chair, I would like to clarify that actually permitting the assembly of 2,500 people on private property is not something that the district can do or is delegated to the CAO. They can do that. There's nothing to stop somebody from doing that because it fits within the permitted use of the zoning. It's through our specific bylaws that get triggered with an event like this that the district works with the event planner to ensure the impact of the event is a positive one on the community, and that we can look after making sure it's a successful event and the impact on the neighbors is minimal. So the idea of an event permit is almost a little bit of a misnomer. The permit is really the portal, as Ms. Guest has said, through which we trigger our bylaws, as opposed to the CAO being able to actually say, yes, you can have this event, they can have this event, because it's private property.
So just on that point, I mean, just for people that weren't familiar with the rezoning, that part, I'm going by recollection, was zoned for an active park. That's where the children's play area, et cetera, might be, as the polygon development fills up the old golf course site. But at some point, it will be dedicated to the district, like any other park space would be, which, and the Constellation is on existing, or proposed to be on existing parkland. So could you just speak to that, because I think that triggers another level of decisions.
Yes, absolutely, thank you. This is why I should follow my notes. It's also in the district's best interest to play a proactive role in managing and helping these event producers mitigate their risk, as we anticipate this portion of the park to be turned over to the district, and the same lens will be used and applied to the Constellation Festival as Norman Rudy's backyard at Prey. It is the organizers' intent to move to a series in coming years, so that it's anticipated that the park will become our land at that point, and that there will be major planned event policy in place to support the council. Yes, and so very much like the Constellation, in the absence of a major planned event policy, the Constellation Festival exists under a license. If we do not have a major planned event policy in place by then, they as well will operate under a license.
Councilor French?
So I'm curious, specific to this slide.
Yeah.
The purple and the yellow, does this represent fencing or?
Yes. Yeah, the yellow is a different color, because right now the rules that regulate whether or not they need to fence is the Liquor Control Board. And if their capacity threshold is under a certain amount, they do not need to fence up against water. If it's over a certain threshold, they do need to fence against water. So given their, given the number of tickets sold, they may or may not have to.
For whatever it's worth, an event like this, I just think would be a travesty if fences were put around that water. It would just detract from the appeal of the environment. Anyway, thank you.
So going forward, you have, I just saw the thing a minute ago, the intent is to bring in the fourth quarter, is to bring a discussion to council around a major event policy. So we're talking about some kind of a threshold where we would have to say yes or no, regardless of whether it's on private property or not.
That's when staff will start looking at the overall special event policy and likely introducing language around major planned events. Not necessarily so that it would replace the license, but that so that council and staff have the clarity to make decisions within their legislative authority and to ensure that the expectations of the community are matched with the level of events that they're experiencing.
So with this event, Norman Rudy's event, is it going to be amplified music or activities? Could you give us
Yes.
any detail to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It will definitely be amplified music. It is a concert series with a variety of different local and, I won't use the word international, but Canadian B-level artists. And so there will definitely, the intent is obviously to celebrate music and have a good time, and neighbors should anticipate the level of music associated with that.
Any other comments or questions, Council?
Just where we are at in the presentation, I had a comment on concerning where you, maybe I'll just raise it now. You've mentioned Tourism Squamish, and my question will be what their role is and how they may be offering resources. And I'd just like to point to a particular program that I've been involved with Tourism Squamish, or rather through Tourism Squamish with Destination BC. So they offer a program you refer to experiences, and your conversations with proponents of projects and what they're doing in delivering experiences. The Remarkable Experiences program of Destination BC can be highly recommended. I've taken part in a course of them, a month-long, nonprofits, local businesses, concerning who our guests are, what partnerships could look like, and how to promote. And there was an enormous amount of useful information, and I can just highly recommend that anybody coming to your door can be pointed to that program. My question is, what then is the role of Tourism Squamish? Are they offering or pointing to resources like this?
I am unaware if Tourism Squamish has pointed specifically to this. I know that they are connected and in conversation, but I can't speak specifically if that particular program was highlighted to them.
Any other comments? No? Thank you very much.
Thanks.